I want to welcome everybody to our Manager Monday for today, where our session for today is called Creating a Quality AEL Program Starts with the Heart. And our presenter for today is Dr. Irene Ramos from Crossroads Adult Education Program. And joining me today, I will be your moderator. I am Liz Moya. And then I am accompanied by Wayne Cradle, who will be serving as my co-host. And I also have Dr. Olga Escamilla, who will also be assisting as co-host and tech support. So thank you to my colleagues for joining me today. And so before we get started, today we do have our featured speaker. We have Dr. Irene Ramos. She has worked in the field of adult education since August 1990 and has performed numerous roles in her career, ranging from instructor, career counselor, summer youth program coordinator, adult education and literacy supervisor, staff development trainer, special projects coordinator, career navigator, instructional coach, and workforce center manager. Currently, she is working at the Education Service Center as the program manager for Crossroads Adult Education, where she works alongside a strong team of hardworking professionals dedicated to helping guide others towards success. Dr. Ramos lives in Poteet, Texas, where she was born and raised and where she served on city council and as mayor. She received her bachelor's from Our Lady of the Lake in San Antonio, Texas, and her doctorate of jurisprudence from St. Mary's School of Law in San Antonio, Texas. Dr. Ramos has a passion for holistic education of adults that starts from a place of genuine caring and hopes to share her passion with other education providers. Welcome, Dr. Ramos.
All right, thank you, Liz. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Oh my gosh, you made me sound so good, Liz. Wow, thank you so much for that glowing introduction. Welcome, everybody. I see a lot of my teachers and the wonderful team members here in the audience, and as well as friends from adult education. Welcome, everybody, to Creating a Quality AEL Program Starts with the Heart. I'm an avid believer in starting with the affective domain. When you can capture someone emotionally, you will capture them for a longer period of time. Because remember, the old adage is very true. They don't care what you know until they know that you care. And I live by that. So I want to thank everybody for coming today and hope that you're ready. You know so much feel-good stuff, so little time. The whole idea here is that we have to tap into our audience, wherever it is and wherever we find them. You take people as you find them. And so we find out at first, how are you feeling? And hopefully we give our students, when we're registering them before they're our students, when they come in the door, to get a check-in and find out, how are you feeling? Often they come in a little on edge. Maybe they're intrepid. They may be apprehensive. It's important to know your audience. So thank you guys for sharing that today. So here's our objective, some essential questions that's going to drive what we do today. Number one, what is that transition curve? Well, I'm glad you asked. And we're going to go over, I'm going to introduce you today. My goal is to introduce you to the transition curve and get you thinking about how we can utilize what we know about this transition dynamic to create a quality program. Number two, what are some essential items to creating a quality program? And then how can we start to rebrand our program for the future of adult education? So here's just 3 guiding questions. You know, the rule of 3, I like to stick with it. And so here's 3 questions that I'd like to answer. So by the end of the training, you'll have more information about the transition curve. You'll have thought about at least and taken some notes about some essential items that maybe if you haven't thought about, or maybe you haven't fleshed out, or maybe you have, that at least you get an order and a sense of what to look at for your quality program. And then, of course, how can I rebrand something that's already been going on for ages to be new? Okay, so we start out here with a few words, And I'll tell you, let me take a step back as you're looking at these, and maybe you want to write them down. Okay, I want to give you a little background because our program in 2018, we received the grant. We're a brand new provider. And I stay brand new because the first 2 years, you will experience an implementation dip. We started from the ground up. So that means that July 1, 2018, the only person working for the program was me. Okay, and those of you who've worked in adult ed for any number of years know that you do not have downtime in adult ed. So we did experience a bit of an implementation dip the first few months of our program. And so we are allowed these dips and dives in the first 2 years of our program while we are getting our sea legs. We're still trying to figure out how this thing works, hiring people, getting the right team together. And I can tell you, this is our 3rd year and we feel strong. We've got our moves. We've rebranded adult education in the Coastal Bend region. We have an extremely strong team. I feel so graced and blessed to have the most amazing coordinators, data people. I have a strong team, but it did not happen, in one fell swoop. It takes time and we're always a work in progress, but I cannot say enough good things about the staff. So what we're looking at here is when things happen, we experience change. Here's some of the things that we may be faced: resistance, shock, denial, awareness, acceptance, exploration, integration, anger, and blame. And I want you to think about what order these things come in, because I have shuffled them around. And when you put them on a trajectory of change for your students or your staff, it's called the transition curve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask which one of these dynamics comes first when you're facing change. When someone is faced with transition or change, what do they experience first? What do you think it is? There's no right or wrong answer, okay? Well, there actually is. Truly, there is a transition change. But right now, while you're thinking about it, you guys, I want you to pick one or two, or maybe think of it. You've written them all down. That's great. And you can come into your breakout room, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes to discuss with the people that are in there. So make it quick, share and move on, and allow as many people to share as possible what they believe the order is, or what comes first at the very least, and why. Please defend why you think that students experience certain things before or in a certain order. We had some great sharing in there, some really good stuff. And so I'm glad you guys got a chance to discuss what you might think, and also thinking about what's the shape of this transition look like, because there's definitely a path of up and down here. And we had some great stuff. I mean, Sylvia, Wayne, Lorraine, and Ruth in my group, they were talking some heavy duty stuff and really relating to it. But let's look at this curve. This is the actual curve. This is called the transition curve, okay? And there are no wrong ideas about this. You were thinking about, some of you, your situation, like applying it to your life. Some of these terms sound very familiar to you. And guess what? As adults, we have already got experiences. And so you're already anchoring this learning, this new learning, if it's new for you or if you've gone through it before, to something that you're already familiar with. I know you have, and the next slide's going to reveal that. But if you're looking at this now, this is one form of it. As you can see on the left side, we have confidence, self-esteem, dipping from low and high. So there's different elements involved in this too, right? And then, of course, we have through time with a definite starting point and ending point. And so you'll notice something about shock, right? That it is not even on the curve yet, all right? And we had a little discussion, you probably did too in your room, I hope you did, about the idea of shock, and you wonder, where does it go? And when you think about some of your students and why they come to your program, think about some of the reasons. What makes them come? Why are they there? We're dealing with adults, and they have busy lives. And the 3 biggest roles and responsibilities in their life are their work, their family, and their role in the community. And unless we can fit our program into one of those as a relevant, purposeful activity for that, they're not going to be interested in our program. It has to meet the goal of something in their life. And usually for us, we're we rebranded ourselves at Crossroads because we say, we will help you improve your situation with work, with retraining, okay, with your education, to help your family, to give them a sustainable living. They can go from just a job to a career. All right. But what brings them to our door? They've experienced some sort of sudden, possibly very negative change. It may be legal problems, like some of our court-ordered students. It could be a death, and right now an illness. It could be a pandemic, and now their employer is bankrupt and is laying people off. And we understanding with a heart of caring that they are coming to us for an opportunity, and they may be walking through the door in shock and unaware. And for them to get on that transition curve, they have to reach a place of, we have to get them beyond that place of denial and disbelief, which they may be resistant, and you've seen it before. We want them, just like Wayne said in our group, we want them at awareness. That's where it really starts. But you know what starts? We are starting to see a chipping away of their shell, because what put them in denial, and some of our court-ordered students is very strong. You tell them, they come in to your program and you give them all of say, okay, you know what, we have expectations. These are our expectations. This is not a school. This is an adult ed program, a training program. And here's our expectations for you. And they may resist. Okay? But how are we couching these terms? How are we priming this learner, and how are we meeting them? Because if we're going to put our hand up like a push, what we're going to get is a push back. But if we extend our hand out with palm open up, I'm gonna help you up, instead of like a stop and a resist and a push. When you have your hand up like a push, it's push back. But if you have your hand out open, I'm gonna help you up this hill and lift you up. That's how we meet our students. And how does our program design aid in that? So here's some of the questions that I want you to be thinking about. But as you're looking at this curve, you see, yes, some of you said, oh, anger and blame and all this negativity. It's true. We have to get through this curve, and you'll notice that acceptance and regret comes at the lowest point, and that is called the dip of despair. They may feel lower than when they came in. Odds are they will, because we have to test them. We do, and we want to fluff the word up to assessment, but when it comes right down to it, we need to come in understanding too that they may not have tested in many, many years. They may not have taken a computer test. They may know only paper pencil. They may need glasses and they don't even know it. And so we have a lot of things because we are dealing with adults. So there's a lot to take in here. We don't have to pretend like we're going to, in all one fell swoop, know how to get them to this strength of recognition and exploration and discovery and development integration. But there are some best practices we can use to help get them there. And one of the best ways is our own behavior and how we meet them at the door. So this curve looked familiar to a lot of you. The words that were there, you're like, right away, you connected it to the stages of grief. But what is our life made up of but meetings and partings, beginnings and endings? And so this was developed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and has been modified since then to be called the transition curve, but the change that we all go through, which was the grieving process. And so, everything is a door open and a door closed. A door we enter through and a door we exit through is the same door. And so we view this and understand those transitions. Everything a beginning and an ending. So how can we use this information to help our students stand, succeed in class? Where do they tend to be when we enroll them? And where should we strive to see them on the curve? So I'm going to go back to that. Some of these questions, think about it for a minute. Where are they when they come in? Where do we want to see them? And how can we use this information to help them stay? Think about that curve again. Some of our students do come in with that awareness. And some of them who've been in our program or been in other programs a couple of times, they're like, I've been trying to get in here and it's been a while, but I know I need to do this, so let's do this. And so some of these students come in strong. Olga and I used to teach together, Dr. Escamilla, and we used to call them the glue girls. They were usually older females whose kids were like empty nesting, and they were ready to do something for themselves. And they'd come in and they would be a mother to everyone in the class. And so we use those students, that's a wrong word, we utilize their strength in our class to help make the class even stronger.
Dr. Ramos, there's a question,
So
if you would be able to go back to the questions, if you don't mind.
Where do they tend to be when they enroll? And they're going to be all over the place. Just like we pointed out when we were sharing, they're going to be all over. They could come in shock and denial, because when you test them and you tell them, I'm sorry, you're reading at a 5th grade level. No, I could do better than that. Especially our quarter students, they really, really do. They can be mired in denial. But we want, how do we frame and prime this information out to help them? And when we first started doing this new TABE 11-12, I would have a conversation. I asked everybody, look, if you're going to share scores, have a conversation first with them and let them know this test measures only where you are now. It's not anything you can study for. And we're using it to inform us about where you are and how we can best help you. So number one, do not lose heart. We're here to help you. Take it as a challenge and use it so that next time you take this test, you're more aware and you do better. You're not competing against anyone in this room. You're competing with yourself. How can you personally do better? What can you do to improve these scores? Then you show them what they've done and tell them and sit there with them. And let them know we're here with you. We're here with you on this journey. But if you're just handing them a piece of paper that shows they're reading at a 3rd grade level, what do you think might happen on that transition curve? Now, they do fall off. When they fall off of the transition curve, whatever it may be that's happening in their life, we cannot control. And often there are things like that. But there are things we do definitely control. Where they're placed in the class, what level they're in, and having those conversations with them. And I know we've got a lot of ground to cover still, so I'm going to move forward. But be thinking about these. Where are they when they come in? And how can we see them move forward on that curve? You want them in a place, not just of awareness, but of experiencing the fullness of where they can be, which is beyond the pit of despair. Okay? And so you ask yourself, that first question was, how can we use this transition curve to improve? By looking at the first contact. And these are the areas where your program can create quality. Outreach. Having a plan for connecting with students. Where are they? Where are you casting your net? And if your net is continually coming up empty, what are you doing to find a new place to where you're getting those students that you can bear fruit? And that outreach is really important. What is the message that you're sending out? Are your doors open truly to everyone who needs it? And how are you making them feel welcome? Recruitment. How do they find out about your program? Are you on social media? And what exactly is the message that's being sent out to social media? What is the first message they hear? So you're saying, call this number now and get enrolled. Okay, but who's answering the phone? Or is the phone just ringing and ringing and then going to voicemail? Okay, and what is it that they're hearing when the phone is picked up? Is it a welcoming message of hope? Or is it someone who maybe didn't have training in customer service and might be tired or maybe grumpy or something? So helping your staff to understand how important it is, because you know what they say, I can hear you smiling over the phone. I can also hear you if you're upset over the phone without you even having to indicate otherwise. You're reading a script and your emotions come through loud and clear. So registration also. What is their first contact like when they come in to register and talk to somebody? And are they getting that feel-good contact of hope, building that hope and growth mindset, making sure that every interaction early on keeps them on that curve? And then the assessment. When are they getting tested? How are they being introduced to this assessment? You know, it may sound far-fetched because we're all chasing, we all have compliance. We do. We have grant compliance. And it's not easy to start counting their hours, especially right now. We're all trying to figure out this remote testing. I mean, I don't know, maybe somebody out there's already got the magic panacea button and they're doing everything and flying high online. Maybe they've opened up their doors and are starting to test face-to-face. In our area, we're one of the hotbeds of infection right now, so we have no designs on opening up. So everything is online. And so we're still trying to figure out this remote. But it's even more imperative that we do this the right way. If you bring people in, you tell them, call this number or fill this out, and someone will call you, and then you're not sensitive to the fact that they've not tested in a long time. Again, some of the things that we talked about before, you know, they may be challenged in that. So we want to be very careful about when you test. There's going to be some payday if you come in early on and have a conversation with them, even though you're not tracking the time, you're not getting credit for it in Teams, but you're building that relationship. So your orientation and testing, are they conducted in a way that makes them feel welcomed? That everyone has a chance to ask questions? And one thing really, when are your participants given a chance to really share freely? Again, it's become a true challenge online. But even before that, when we were face-to-face, the numbers that we got didn't allow for them to really do a lot of sharing. We did some in our mapping, but this needs to happen earlier where they're talking to someone about what they aspire for and what we can actually offer. So when are they given that chance? Are they ever given that chance? And these are called conversations of change. You know, we had this online conference. I go to this. Do we have any questions, Liz?
Sorry, I was looking for my unmute button. Actually, there aren't any questions other than comments about how others share in how they relate to the transition curve. So Patricia Blount said that for her personally, COVID has impacted her in most of these ways, referring to the transition curve. And Matthew Leal says, I recently got a call from a company I just left. When they asked what they could have done to keep my business, I said, you should have answered your phone. And good point, Matthew. And then Tiffany Lee does ask, what do you recommend to do for publicity or first contact when your office is remote?
Okay, well, I can give you the example. Thank you. That's a great question because, you know, I talked to Eva Cantwell. She's the Dynamo coordinator that we have. I mean, just rocking it, just amazing. Her and Christy Kitchen are the legs that this program runs on. Just a foundation that we are running on, these two coordinators. And when we first went remote, we called it the Giddy because we were kind of, you know, as weird and frunkety as it was being in this pandemic, it forced us to go online, and we had that as a goal to do more remote online work. So everything switched from face-to-face to immediately online. And so what we have done is we were able to create an online registration form, but we didn't completely put all of the Pearl online. We did enough to get the demographic information for the students, which then once we received it, would trigger a phone call, a conversation. Again, these are the conversations of change. And just like I was saying, you know, I coined this this term connection, not perfection, from an online conference that I was at, normally a face-to-face that quickly had to turn on a dime and become online. And they kept saying that, look, we're looking for the connection here. We're not looking for perfection. It's not perfect. It's not going to be. But we want to build that connection. And that is perfectly how we should be viewing our students. How are we connecting with them? So that the Pearl, filling it out online, triggers that call. And now we have a conversation with them. Now they're on our radar. And we can call with that discussion, that little interview that happens where we get the information like, so let me ask you a few questions. You know, hey, how are you today? Good, glad, welcome. I'm so happy to know that you are ready to come to classes. Let me ask you if you have time for a few questions, and then go through the rest of those questions that sometimes are very daunting, like whether you're a vet or does this apply to you or you know, and that way they're not filling it out cold on a form online, but instead it becomes that conversation of change with a human with a heart. They begin to shift that experience instead of it being a cold online thing to a person on the other end. Does it take more time? Yes. Does it take more resources? Absolutely. But we're shifting from this face-to-face thing where people could walk in at any time to an online and virtual remote. But those conversations are still very real and happening in that immediate time. Again, and I put in there that we're not trying to replicate K-12. I hope I answered your question, by the way. We're not trying to replicate K-12. We're adult ed. Okay, and although we borrow from their research and everything, we're still our own program. We still are working with people who have experiences and that sort of thing. We're acknowledging those life experiences, because you may have a mom and a dad, or just a dad, who raised 5 kids on their own, and all their kids are doctors, lawyers, dentists, etc. Very accomplished. That's an accomplishment, even though they never got their high school equivalency. And so we're dealing with people who have accomplishments. They may have a business. They may be a very talented surgeon from another country, and all they need is the language, okay? So we can't sell them short. Making those connections will help us know what they are, who they are, and connect more fully with them. And then with our staff too, we have to understand the lens that we see from may have a little, bias, what they call confirmation bias. It's like everything you want to use to verify what you already know, instead of being open to what could possibly be. So let's think about, maybe we have developed some blind spots. Me, having been in adult ed a long time, I have to continually pull myself in, give something a chance, and then if it doesn't work, then I come back and say, look, from my experience, this is what it's been. I gave it a shot, you tried it, let's regroup and see what's happening here, so let's fix it. So there may be some scotomas, some blind spots we've developed. Always being aware of that is gonna help. So here's that change again. So how can we view our program through this transition curve, right? And I always like to say, people love change. They just don't know it yet. We have to prime people for change. Be excited about it ourselves, instead of begrudgingly saying, oh, we've got to comply. I've got this stuff to do, this stuff to do. Let's create that quality program by staying ahead of the shift, right? Staying ahead. Always listening for those keywords from leadership. They'll start talking about things you're not familiar with. You're like, oh, you better write that down, because next year that's going to be a requirement. And I know Tiffany knows what I'm talking about, because it's something that's always happened. I started with Job Training Partnership Act, then Workforce Investment Act. Now we're under the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. Each time having different expectations, key words, terms, key phrases that we needed to stay fluid with and stay on top of. And I know we're going quick, but here's our last activity. I want at least 4 minutes on this breakout room. If you've already got them set up, Liz, you could just set them automatic. When I say go, think of where these should go. And this is called change is basic. But what needs to change first? Is it your behavior that changes, your attitudes, skills, instruction, or communication? What needs to change first, and in what order should they change to make the change and transition flow better? So in your breakout rooms, I want you to talk about and defend your ideas. So if you want to write them down quickly: behavior, attitudes, skills, instruction, and communication. What needs to change first, second, third? What order do they change in order to make the change effective? All right, so we had some excellent discussions about what should come first, with our basic change being basic. And so some people thinking maybe attitudes change first, maybe skills, or, how does behavior impact attitude, vice versa. There really is no one single, unlike the transition curve, there's no one single pathway. And then also, I don't know if your guys' discussion got into this, but the idea that depending on whether you're talking about the teacher's view, the student change, the program change, is going to impact it differently. An overall program change might require a change in communication before you get to the others. And so as an individual, we want to work on changing our attitude first and our behavior so they can impact our communication. But you see how this is very fluid. So thank you guys for this. Are there any other questions about that? Any comments about the change? What comes first?
There were some comments. So Melissa posted, your attitude determines your outcome.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And Kelly Meek shared, we debated if communications or attitude came first. Tiffany Johnson shared, it is sad to see so many systems have forgotten how to listen and talk with real people. And
Right.
Patricia shared, attitude is a big deal.
Yes, it is. So it seems like everybody can agree that
Mm-hmm.
attitude is super duper important in our worldview because, as we were talking, I know Sylvia Stinson, mentioned about how you may not wake up feeling great that day, but when somebody calls you on the phone, you got to kind of fake it till you make it because a lot of things happen. They start in our mind. I know you've heard it before. Tired is a state of mind. If you continue to tell yourself, oh, I'm so tired, I'm so tired, your body will eventually believe that. And I use the example of my husband who'll come home and Friday night or something and sit down on the recliner, settle into watching something on TV that he can fall asleep to. And then if the doorbell rings, bing, bing, and it's his old friend with a 6-pack of cold Cokes, haha. And all of a sudden, he's got a lot of energy and he's going to go hang out with Mark. So, tired truly is a state of mind. Everything begins with a state of mind. And so if we set our sights every morning when we open our eyes and say, today I'm going to make this the best day, every day gets better and better, just like Joel Osteen says. Or you set your feet down and you say, no matter what, I'm going to do my honest best today. And if your honest best is telling somebody else, look, can you field my calls because I'm not feeling great today, then you've done your honest best. But that every day you set your sights on changing that attitude and doing better. So yeah, this goes a long way. And that's where we come from, the heart. So that you're understanding, that your attitude makes such a big difference. I think everybody here, I'm preaching to the choir because you guys all get it, that we have to start with our view and how we impact others. We have a unique opportunity in adulthood to impact generations. How will we use that unique opportunity in our favor? So I want to read this to you. One way that we can always be thinking, and how can we layer these types of communications to our students to help them? Because one of the areas that really is the one that creates the shock and denial is the testing. The tape test for our program proves to be the hugest hurdle for us because it's a difficult test, and the students weren't used to it, and trying to get teachers used to what the questions looked like and how to help them make progress has been a super duper challenge. But I love this letter that I've always gone back to, a teacher who has such a wonderful heart, who sent this in advance, knowing that in some schools focused on a state test, an assessment, and that there's so much more that's not tested. And so, Liz, can you see that letter? Do you want to read it for us?
I can see the letter. It says, my dear students, next week, you will take your State of Texas Assessment of Academic Readiness STAR exam for math and reading. I know how hard you have worked, but there is something very important you must know. The STAR test does not assess all of what makes each of you special and unique. The people who create these tests and score them do not know each of you the way I do, and certainly not the way your families do. They do not know that some of you speak 2 languages, or that you love to sing or draw. They have not seen your natural talent for dancing. They do not know that your friends count on you to be there for them, that your laughter can brighten that darkest day, or that your face turns red when you feel shy. They do not know that you participate in sports, wonder about the future, or sometimes you help with your little brother or sister after school. They do not know that you are kind, trustworthy, and thoughtful, and every day you try to be your very best. The scores you will get from this test will tell you something, but they will not tell you everything. There are many ways of being smart. You are smart. You are enough. You are the light that brightens my day. So while you are preparing for the test and in the midst of it all, remember that there is no way to test all of the amazing and awesome things that make you, you. Love, Liz Brown.
Thank you, Liz. And so as we're reading this letter and letting it sink in, this is a teacher who is very sensitive and understands that kids are going to stress out in K-12, but our students do too. You know, they may not have taken a test in a long time. They may be fretting about being able to get into an IET because they need to score a certain level on their progress. Their livelihood can be depending on it. I stayed late one night testing. It was about 1.5 years ago. And there was a lady who took a really long time. She took the maximum amount of time on the tape. Everybody had already left, and she felt really, when people start leaving and packing it up and finishing their test, the ones that are taking longer start feeling intimidated. And she looked up and she said, "I'm sorry, I can stop if you want." I said, No, I want you to finish. Do all you can. I'm here for you. And so when she finished it, she turned in her test. She said, "Thank you so much for waiting for me." She said, I have been trying for years to do this, but there was a program I could have gone to that was closer to home, but I wanted to come here because I heard you care. And that meant a lot to me because we do care. When you do care, again, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And I don't want anyone thinking any different of our program or any of our adulted programs. I love the fact that we care and that we come from the heart and that we are caring for people who need us to care. They have wounds and we need to understand it. We need to see from that perspective. So I wanted to share that letter with you so you can think of ways where you can send messages to your students. Now we're looking at particular programs that are going to help us with communication, like Remind and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of research that shows that when you reach out and share a personal message with a student, that helps retain that student. So think about these sorts of things that you can send in an email, some kind of outreach, something that you can send them to show that you really care. Okay, so now I hope that you've gotten to look at this dynamic of change and how broad it is, that you are beginning to think about these conversations of change that help build the rapport and the connection with students to help them stay and reduce the stress of students and staff. And then always setting your sights on what we can do different the next time. So what that paradigm of shift looks like. I want to thank you guys for sticking with me. I know we went a little long, 1 minute long, but if you need anything, I'm here for you. That's my name, Irene Ramos. Irene Ramos. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to be closing the webinar room now. Thank you to Dr. Olga Escamilla and Mr. Wayne Crandall for helping me today. You all have a wonderful week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.